The old Victorian mansion stood at the edge of town, its imposing facade hiding a collection of secrets within. In its dimly lit rooms, Margaret, a reclusive doll collector, surrounded herself with porcelain faces frozen in eternal smiles. The townspeople whispered about the eerie beauty of her collection, but Margaret revelled in the company of her silent companions. As the years passed, the dolls multiplied. Each new addition had a story, an origin that added to the allure of her peculiar collection. One rainy evening, Margaret returned from an estate sale with an antique doll rumoured to be haunted. The previous owner, an elderly woman, had claimed that the doll spoke to her in hushed whispers during the lonely hours of the night. Margaret dismissed the notion as mere superstition, convinced that the doll's mysterious allure lay in its intricate craftsmanship. She placed it on the shelf with the others, its glassy eyes casting an enigmatic gaze across the room. That night, as the rain tapped against the window panes, Margaret sat in her dimly lit parlour, surrounded by her dolls. The ticking of an ancient clock filled the silence, and the flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls. As Margaret arranged her collection, a soft voice murmured in the background. At first, she attributed it to the creaks and groans of the old house, but as the voice persisted, Margaret realized it emanated from the antique doll. The words were indistinct, a ghostly whisper that teased the edges of her consciousness. Margaret strained to listen, her heart quickening with each passing moment. The doll seemed to come to life, its features contorting into an expression that mirrored the words she couldn't quite comprehend. Days turned into nights, and Margaret's obsession with the haunted doll deepened. She found herself spending hours in the parlour, engrossed in whispered conversations with the porcelain figures. The other dolls, once silent, seemed to stir with an energy of their own. Margaret couldn't escape the feeling that they, too, were trying to communicate. The voices grew more distinct, forming fragmented sentences that echoed through the room. Margaret became captivated by the haunted doll's tale, a tragic story of unfulfilled promises and lost love. Night after night, the doll spoke of a past that intertwined with Margaret's own, drawing her into a web of spectral connections. Haunted by the ethereal voices, Margaret's once ordered life descended into chaos. She withdrew from the outside world, her only companions, the dolls that seemed to absorb the haunting whispers. The townspeople, sensing the change, spoke of Margaret's descent into madness. One day, a concerned neighbour named Emily visited the Victorian mansion. The air inside felt heavy with an otherworldly presence. Margaret greeted Emily with hollow eyes, her once vibrant spirit now dimmed by the spectral forces that surrounded her. "I hear them, Emily," Margaret whispered, her gaze fixed on the dolls that lined the shelves, the voices of the past, the echoes of forgotten souls. Emily, unnerved by the eerie atmosphere, tried to reason with Margaret, pleading with her to seek help. But Margaret was consumed by the spectral chorus, her connection with the dolls deepening into an unbreakable bond. As the whispers continued, Margaret's obsession escalated. She began to believe that the dolls held the key to unlocking the mysteries of the afterlife. Night after night, she conducted séances, surrounding herself with flickering candles and incantations in a desperate attempt to commune with the spirits trapped within the porcelain vessels. The once charming Victorian mansion became a place of shadows and echoes, a haunting ground where the voices of the dolls mingled with Margaret's anguished cries. Emily, tormented by the transformation of her friend, sought the help of a renowned paranormal investigator. The investigator, a skeptical yet open-minded man named Dr. Samuel Crawford, arrived at the mansion one stormy night. The air crackled with an unnatural energy as he entered the parlour, where Margaret sat amidst her dolls, their eyes gleaming in the dim light. Margaret, oblivious to the presence of the investigator, continued her séance. The room buzzed with a spectral energy, and the dolls seemed to come to life, their porcelain faces contorting with the weight of the voices that whispered through the air. Dr. Crawford, intrigued by the phenomenon, carefully approached Margaret. He spoke gently, trying to break through the wall of obsession that surrounded her. But Margaret was lost in the communion with the dolls, her eyes vacant and her voice an instrument of the unseen. As Dr. Crawford observed the room, he noticed patterns in the whispers, the fragments of stories, the echoes of long-forgotten lives. It became clear that the dolls, each carrying a piece of the past, were conduits for spirits longing to share their tales. With a sudden realization, Dr. Crawford decided to delve deeper. He joined Margaret in the séance, allowing the haunting whispers to guide him through the tapestry of time. The room pulsated with an otherworldly energy, as the investigator and the doll collector became conduits for the voices of the past. In the midst of the spectral chorus, the haunted doll revealed its story, a love torn asunder by tragedy. Margaret, her consciousness intertwined with the spirits, felt the weight of the unfulfilled promises and the sorrow that bound the haunted doll to the mortal realm. As the séance reached its climax, the atmosphere in the Victorian mansion shifted. A sudden gust of wind extinguished the candles, and the room fell into darkness. The voices faded, leaving behind an eerie stillness. When the candles were relit, Margaret sat motionless, her eyes no longer vacant. The dolls, once animated by the spectral whispers, returned to their silent poses. The connection forged between the living and the departed had been savoured. Dr. Crawford, with a mixture of relief and curiosity, approached Margaret. She looked at him with eyes that bore the weight of the stories she had glimpsed in the ethereal realm. The haunted doll, once an instrument of torment, now stood silent and serene. As the dawn broke, Margaret emerged from the mansion, her once obsessive gaze softened by the transformative night. The townspeople, who had feared the descent of madness, witnessed Margaret's return to the world with a sense of awe and reverence. The Victorian mansion, once a place of haunting whispers, now stood as a testament to the mysteries that lingered at the intersection of the living and the dead. Margaret, forever changed by the spectral voices, became a guardian of the dolls and the stories they carried. The haunted doll, having shared its tale, found peace in the afterlife. The townspeople, no longer wary of Margaret, glimpsed a profound wisdom in her eyes, a wisdom forged by the voices of the past. And so the old Victorian mansion stood at the edge of town, its secrets now whispered among the townspeople as a tale of redemption and the enduring connections that transcend the boundaries between life and death.